Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Hi, welcome back, everybody. Every time we get together with this gentleman, we get insight on things that affect us in our world. And I do really mean in our world because he has spent many years as an urban and regional planner. That's where it all begins, specifically at the University of Pittsburgh. But within that planning is transportation, our sewer systems. There's so much that goes into that. And we're going to talk about some things that are affecting many of us and how they could potentially affect others in the future. He's our man of the year. Richard Golden Bickel Jr. joins us once again on the program. Hey, Richard, how you doing?
Very good. How are you, Steve?
Very well. I'm trying to dissect what's going on here with congestion pricing. Now, I know that we talked about this last year, toward the end of the year, if you will, and it was going to go into effect. Then it didn't because of the elections, and then it finally went into effect in New York City. Now, a whole bunch of things are happening with the Trump administration telling New York City to shut down congestion pricing by March 21st. A battle in court. It's like, and lots of other states are looking to adopt congestion pricing. For anybody that's unaware, why don't we start at the beginning defining what congestion pricing is?
Okay. Congestion pricing is charging a fee or a toll to pass through a certain part of a city and using those funds that are generated to support other transportation investments, such as public transit. And so New York's program is charging a fee if you drive in and out of the 60th Street area, which is where Central Park sort of starts. And it's been met with mixed enthusiasm.
Well, and depending on how you look at it, it has generated so far a lot of money in the first month for New York City. I mean, a lot of people fought it.
$48 million.
Right. And what we're talking about here is, I think it's $9 to access below 60th Street in the city. Is that right?
Yes. By holding the program initially, which started at $15, Governor Hochul resulted in lowering the fee to $9. And yet, even with that lower fee, $48 million in a couple of weeks is nothing to laugh about. It's a pretty good outcome, and that will help to support the Metropolitan Transportation Authority's budget and public transit in general in the city.
Interestingly, some say, people have different opinions on this, but congestion has dropped dramatically since the program went into effect. At least the governor is saying that because people don't want to pay. But they say the program's on track to generate, I think, like $500 million by the end of this year, according to the MTA.
Yeah, and one reason the traffic has declined is that some of the peripheral roads in Manhattan are not part of the program, and so people are diverting to non-tolled highways, and at the same time, hopefully some are diverting to public transit, which is one of the goals, and the traffic is down pretty dramatically on some of the highways right in the vicinity of Midtown.
Are you a fan?
Yes, I am. Well, I'm a fan of public transit, and public transit usually is not as well funded as highways, and this is a mechanism to support public transit. And if you can't have a good public transit system in the highest population city in America and also one of the densest, then you're not supporting a key lifeline for mobility in the region and in the city in particular.
I get that people are complaining about it, but in the New York area, New York City area, metro, and many other areas in the country, you pay tolls anyway. This is just, to me, it's another toll.
Yeah, well, the problem is sometimes there are people who are dependent on crossing 60th Street for their jobs. And I don't mean office workers. I mean delivery people and others who might have to pay a couple of times. If you set up this kind of a program, you need some exemptions for special situations. I know already the emergency vehicles, police, et cetera, are not paying any fee because they're essential to maintain the city.
I'm not sure how it works, but what if you're an Uber driver, and that's your livelihood, and you have to make a delivery? Are you going around it, finding a different way? How does that even work?
I think they're getting an exemption for the full $9, and certainly if they're carrying multiple people in the vehicle, I think the fee is lower, but I don't have the specifics.
Yeah, and it's quite pricey, double the fee, as I understand it, for buses and larger vehicles can be like $20, $21. It's a lot of money, I get it, but if you've been in the New York City area, going through some of those tolls, they're pricey too. So this just seems like another toll that they're hitting you up with. How do you think it's going to play out? I mean, we're not fortune tellers, but what does your gut tell you, Richard, that's going to transpire? Again, we have the Trump administration saying shut it down by March 21st. Which is kind of odd, and I don't do politics. I'm not going there at all. No need to. That's the federal side. We're talking about the state here. So that's the federal telling the state what to do. I mean, how do you think it's all going to shake out?
I think it's maybe a standoff, and the courts are going to have to step in and come up with at least an interim solution. Obviously, I'm encouraging the courts to support the governor's stand, and it's a New York State thing right now. But the impacts are far and wide. New Jersey, Connecticut, Rockland County, New York. People are not happy because they have to commute in and out of the city, and they get caught with the overhead transponders that record the toll. You don't have to actually pay it in person. The car is automatically viewed by these transponders, and that clicks the toll in place.
Is it like the Easy Pass? You know, that
in a way, yes.
It is. Okay. All right. And how do they? I know we're getting into the deeper details on this, but how does it know your vehicle?
I believe they have a system to identify the vehicle, take a photograph of it in case there's a lawsuit, and that goes into recording the toll, too.
Gotcha. Wow. Interesting situation. To say the least. Interesting situation, again, with the Fed getting involved with the state in something that is generating revenue. I'm not taking any sides. It's almost as if I'm flying over the bleachers just looking at the whole thing and wondering, I wonder what's going to happen there. I don't have to drive into the city and worry about congestion pricing, so I can't even give an opinion on whether I think it's a good idea or not. I'm just looking at it, from afar, but we'll see how that happens. We have just about 4 weeks away from that. I want to read an email, and we've gotten many of these since we've gotten together with you from people that are interested in a career in urban planning or associated careers. And this one is from Ryan in Gulfport, Mississippi, and says, I'm considering a career in civil engineering or urban planning. What does an entry-level job look like in these fields?
Well, I don't know exactly about civil engineering, except civil engineering is a good associate degree with urban planning. Planning is policy-oriented. Engineering is bricks and mortar-oriented, and the two can work together with the urban planning establishing the policy of where growth and development should occur or redevelopment, and the engineering is actually building the projects, and the expertise is different, but the two professions are very closely aligned.
Gotcha. Yeah. Let's say for urban planning, somebody gets a job, their first job, they've got their degrees and they're looking and they land something, in the very beginning. What would that look like? Would you be an assistant planner? Any thoughts on that?
Well, many programs have internships. And if you end up at an internship situation, you often pick up valuable experience and then learn more about how it is to work in an office and work with different disciplines in that office. That's helpful for your career. And if like me, you didn't have much experience at all in what urban planning is when I started, you can pick it up easily when you start working on projects. I worked for a county planning commission, Montgomery, PA, and I was a community planner going to night meetings, developing local comprehensive plans and zoning proposals, and reviewing subdivisions. That was an excellent background in planning. And I didn't do it in Pittsburgh when I was in school, and I did it at Montgomery County the first couple of years. And it resulted in learning what it's like to go to a night meeting and hear citizens who are supportive or opposed to a project, working with local officials, including the elected officials who make the decisions. And it was really a great experience to work my way into the planning profession.
Do you remember some of the first projects that you worked on when you got your first job?
Yes, the one that was most important for me was being assigned to this low-income neighborhood in a suburban township with an inadequate street pattern, and I worked on a study called the Rahway Avenue Feasibility Study, which looked at extending the avenue up to connect to the surrounding roads, and also helping the lower-income folks who lived in that neighborhood and felt that they were not being listened to. So I was sort of a middleman who was listening to them, being aware of the fact that the local officials were maybe not as supportive of that road extension, although it was a short road extension in the grand scheme of things. And the study was well received by the township and the neighborhoods, and that showed me the value of public involvement, which is what the modern term is, or citizen participation.
It's funny, we were just talking about civil engineering. So I've got an email. By the way, if you want to reach us, instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com. Leanna checks in and says, I'm majoring in civil engineering this school year in hopes of becoming an urban planner, and I'm deciding whether to do a 5-year master's in urban planning. Can you give me some advice? What are your thoughts there?
Most planning degrees are 4 years. Some are associate degrees can be 2 years, and most programs are for a master's degree. There are also accredited planning programs that are only 2 years and not full 4 years. And so it's a mixed bag. And if you have engineering background, that might help you to get into a planning school, and also some of your coursework there.
I'm glad you said that. And it seems like we're kind of focusing on civil engineering in conjunction with or versus urban planning. But it seems to me that if you study civil engineering first, then do your graduate studies for urban planning, you might basically outclass a lot of other people when it comes to getting a job, right?
It would be good to have both credentials, but if you want to be a planner, you need to work with the American Planning Association and the American Institute of Certified Planners, and look at the requirements and make sure you're clicking the boxes for what you need to get to be certified eventually.
When you first started working in this field, and I just want you to think back now what that was like. Were you nervous? I think that happens to all of us. Imposter syndrome, they say. Also, for many of us, you're doing something different and you're wondering, can I really do this? Am I qualified for this? Did you have that feeling in the very beginning?
A little bit. Having decided to become a planner after I originally wanted to be a doctor, and getting poor grades in organic chemistry and regular chemistry, I had already had my sticker shock, and I was looking forward to getting into a profession that I could work with people, understand the growth and development patterns of the area, and make recommendations for decision makers to implement. And it worked out pretty well for me, but at the same time, the Vietnam War was raging, and I was concerned about getting drafted, and there were a lot of pressures, external pressures, as well as trying to start a career in planning.
You started there, and then you managed the staff. I believe we had talked about of dozens, right? Like 50?
Well, I worked as a section chief at the Montgomery County Planning Commission, and I had maybe 5 planners working for me. There was only a staff of 38 or so. When I worked at the Regional Planning Commission, I had a larger group, and they all had responsibilities, and I was sort of organizing them and working with the executive director. And then when I went to SEPTA, where there were 10,800 employees when I started there, and around 9,600 when I left because of funding cutbacks, that was a totally different experience. And I'm so glad that I started at the county level and developed a real appreciation for that kind of program, because you could make a terrific career in public transit, but you're going to be spending more time worrying not only about the funding possibilities, but also the nuts and bolts of implementing public transit projects. And that's part of overall planning, but it's when you work for a public transit agency, it's very specific.
A huge responsibility, especially when you were a director at the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. I believe that we had talked about that. Yeah. I mean, we're talking like multiple counties. How many counties involved there?
The region is 9 counties, 5 in Pennsylvania, Bucks, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery, and Philadelphia, and 3 in 4 in New Jersey, which is Burlington, Camden, Gloucester, and Mercer. And it's a hybrid organization, and it worked pretty well. The board of the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission included representatives from each of those counties, And then they had non-voting members like SEPTA, Port Authority, and others who were also at the table. And it worked very well, and it was led by a couple of directors while I was there who all did a great job. And you have to compromise on certain issues. But a more powerful agency is the Metropolitan Transportation Authority in New York, which also has a multi-agency board, but they're deciding on public transit funding and projects, and that has a different clout than a planning agency. DVRPC developed an annual transportation improvement program, which included public transit and highway projects, but in New York, it's at a different level.
I can't even get my arms around being a director in that capacity for 9 counties, responsible for directing people, urban, all of that, everything going on there. Did that come with a considerable amount of stress for you, or did you just kind of roll with it?
Well, the bottom line is I was a director of a planning unit. The executive director of the agency, who had responsibility for all of the participants, and I never had quite that level of stress, but there was enough stress without that level. But the executive director role is really a situation where you're dealing with elected officials all the way up to the governor and federal representatives, etc. And that's quite a challenge.
Can't even imagine. AICP, I see those letters attached to many in this field. What does that stand for?
American Institute of Certified Planners. You have to take an exam to become an AICP, and I'm an FAICP, which means Fellow of the American Institute of Certified Planners, and that is based on experience and endorsements from through letters, etc. And I got that later on. But the AICP initially was after about 3 years. You had to take a test, and it used to be an oral exam where there were like 4 questions, and you sat there with a tape recorder and a person who was asking you these questions. Now it's all typical multi-question paper that has to be reviewed and signed off on, and it's a little more rigorous than it used to be in the early 70s.
So much at stake here, so much involved, so much money, revenue that needs to go in the right place to support, our population. And I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. We take it for granted. We don't realize what's going on behind the scenes and everything that's shaping our world, from the flow of traffic, as we talked before, sewer systems, everything involved. Glad we talked about it. Glad we provided some insight, too, for students that are looking to get into this field. And, Richard, really appreciate you being here today.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Let's go inside the mind of a 10-year-old.
I should have worn those earrings today. I like those earrings. Gabby has those awesome earrings. I need to ask her where she got those, but that's just what she would want me to do. I'll have Michaela ask her for me.
Buckle up, Sarah.
Yeah, but then Michaela will be like, why don't you just ask her yourself? That's just like Michaela.
Sarah, buckle up.
Michaela's such a great name. I wish I was called Michaela. There's like a dozen Sarahs in my class.
Hey, we're not hitting the road until you buckle up, honey.
Oh yeah, seatbelt. I forget sometimes because my brain is like busy, I wonder if there's pizza at school today.
Sometimes it can be tough to get through to your kids, but it's not impossible. Always make sure they're wearing their seatbelts, even on short drives. Remember, you have the keys, you have the power. Never give up until they buckle up. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. Visit safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup for more information.